Have you ever asked yourself why you're still hurting, even when everything on the surface seems perfectly fine? You've tried meditation, listened to your friend's advice, buried yourself in work, relationships, maybe even distractions. But deep down, there's still this lingering weight in your chest, a heaviness that doesn't go away. It follows you like a shadow, quiet, persistent, and always present. Let me tell you something most people won't dare say out loud. Your deepest suffering rarely comes from the outside world. It doesn't begin with your job, your partner, or your circumstances. It comes from within, from the parts of you that you've abandoned, denied, or silenced. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, once said, "What you do not bring to consciousness returns as fate." And that's exactly what's happening to you. Life keeps whispering truths, but you drown them out. You avoid, escape, scroll, sedate. You tell yourself it'll pass, that it's just a phase. But it doesn't pass, does it? Because pain, real pain, doesn't want to be ignored. It demands to be seen, to be understood. This isn't just another self-help video stuffed with cliches and quick fixes. I'm not here to make you feel better for a moment. I'm here to challenge you to look into the mirror and finally see what you've been. Avoiding. Give me a few minutes, that's all I ask. And I'll show you why the suffering never ends, and how maybe for the first time it can. Not through magic, not through willpower, but through awareness. Maybe right now you're quietly falling apart. Maybe you're smiling in public while screaming in private. Or maybe you've numbed yourself so completely that pain just feels like background noise. But here's the hard truth. Suffering lasts because you haven't yet dared to look at its roots. Carl Jung devoted his entire life to mapping the dark corners of the human soul. He understood something few people ever do, that real healing comes not from running from the darkness, but from walking straight into it. So if you're still with me, if you're ready to finally face what hurts, I promise you something. You will not leave this video the same, because what you're about to discover may completely shift how you see yourself, your pain, and your path to freedom. Now, let's begin with the most dangerous misunderstanding of all. You believe you suffer because of them, your boss, your relationship, money problems, social pressure, the weight of expectations, but that's only the surface. The real pain, the one that haunts you in silence, comes from something far more personal. And that's exactly what we'll uncover in the next part. You've spent years playing a role, and now that role is all you know. From a young age, you were taught to adapt, to be accepted, to meet the expectations of others. So, step by step, you drifted further from your authentic self. You became a version of yourself that was easier for the world to tolerate, more polite, more agreeable, less disruptive. You held your tongue when you wanted to scream. You repressed your joy, your pain, your anger, just to keep the peace. And in doing so, you created a mask so convincing that even you started to believe it. But beneath that silence, something inside you was screaming. This is the pain of disconnection, a slow-burning ache, quiet yet corrosive. It doesn't shout, but it never leaves. It eats at you from within. You look in the mirror and realize you don't recognize the person staring back. Not truly, not anymore. And yet, you carry on. You fulfill your role, whether smile, go through the motions. You've grown used to the version of yourself the world rewarded. But your soul knows the truth. It knows when you're faking. It knows when you're betraying it. That's when the alarms go off. Anxiety, insomnia, apathy, guilt. These aren't weaknesses, they're signals, warnings. Your soul doesn't speak in words. It speaks in emotions. When you ignore who you really are, it fights back. It doesn't want you to pretend. It wants you to wake up. The pain you feel isn't because you failed. It's not because you're broken. It's because you built a life around who you thought you were supposed to be and forgot who you really are. The loneliness isn't just from being alone. It's from being disconnected from yourself. And when others hurt you, the real pain isn't what they did. It's what you let happen in order to be accepted. As long as you remain disconnected from your true nature, the suffering will persist. You cannot heal an inner wound with external solutions. The root is deeper and it's within you. But here's the part most people miss, that pain. It's not a punishment, it's a message. Carl Jung believed suffering wasn't meaningless. In fact, he saw it as the first step toward transformation. Pain has a purpose. It's trying to bring you back to yourself. The journey home begins the moment you stop running and start listening to your suppressed emotions, to your long-buried truths, to the whispers you've ignored for years, because within you lies something powerful, something hidden, something feared but absolutely necessary. And that's what we'll explore next, the most dangerous, yet most liberating part of your psyche, the one that holds the secret to your healing, the force that Carl Jung called the shadow. What is the shadow? Why does it have so much power over your life? And what happens when you finally stop hiding from it? Let's uncover it together. You've come face to face with the truth. The pain didn't come from the outside, it came from within. Now, it's time to meet the force that's been shaping your life in the shadows. Have you ever felt pulled toward a decision, a person, or a reaction you couldn't explain? Like walking into a relationship that felt wrong from the start, yet you stayed. Or sabotaging something good, even when you deeply wanted it to work. That's not random. That's your shadow, the part of your psyche you've rejected. At work behind the scenes, Carl Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Think about that. What if the pain, the patterns, the repeated disappointments you blame on luck, karma, or other people were actually the invisible hand of your own shadow? And here's the hard truth. It will keep controlling you until you stop running and finally face it. But facing the shadow isn't easy. It's not some poetic metaphor. It's raw, it's real. It means standing in front of the mirror and seeing everything you've buried, the jealousy, the resentment, the rage, the fear, the weakness, the need to control. It means dropping the illusion that you're just a victim of life and acknowledging that there's a darker side within you and that it's part of you. And yet, here's the most powerful thing you'll ever understand. The shadow is not your enemy. It's not a demon. It's a disowned part of your soul. And like anything rejected and abandoned, it doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to be acknowledged, seen, heard, reclaimed. Jung didn't believe in eliminating the shadow. He believed in integrating it. Why? Because what you reject weakens you, but what you integrate, it sets you free. It becomes your strength. When you embrace your shadow, you stop fighting yourself. You stop living in fear of being found out. And that's when you start stepping into your full power. Not a polished, flawless version of yourself, but a complete, honest one. So now that the shadow is no longer hidden, what do you do with it? That's the question we'll face next. Because knowing your shadow is only the beginning. What changes your life, what transforms your suffering, is what you choose to do with it. In the next part, we'll walk the path of true courage. We'll talk about what it takes to begin healing for real. Not just understanding your wounds, but confronting them, working through them, and reclaiming the parts of your soul you left behind. Because while awareness is powerful, it's still just the start. Healing requires movement, grit, honesty, and a willingness to walk into the fire of your own truth. Are you ready for that next step? Let's take it together. You've started to see it. Pain isn't the enemy. It's a signal, a portal. But now comes the real work. Learning to understand what it's trying to say. Start by reflecting on the patterns that have been quietly shaping your life. Those emotional loops that keep pulling you back to the same place. Disappointment, anger, guilt. Every time something knocks you off balance, pay attention. That discomfort isn't just random. It's a message. The unconscious mind doesn't speak in plain sentences. It speaks in symbols, in dreams, in impulses. Your task now is not to judge those patterns, but to observe them with presence, with honesty, and with the courage to truly listen, and listening doesn't mean comforting yourself with easy answers. It means confronting what you've tried to bury. One of the most powerful tools for this work is deep, unfiltered writing. Make time each day to sit down and write as if you're revealing your darkest truths, not to someone else, but to yourself. Write the things you're ashamed to feel, the thoughts you've never dared to say out loud, the emotions you push away because they scare you. Because once those truths escape the prison of silence, they lose the power to quietly sabotage you. Another essential practice is what Jung called therapeutic mirroring. This might mean working with a psychologist or therapist, someone trained to help you understand what your mind is really trying to say beneath the surface. Remember, the unconscious isn't just a dumping ground for your bad thoughts. It's a living, breathing intelligence. It holds your unprocessed grief, your silenced instincts, your unmet needs, all of it waiting not to hurt you, but to heal you. But it only opens up when you stop defending yourself, when you stop making excuses, when you let go of the version of you that always needs to be fine. So ask yourself, sincerely, do you truly want to stop suffering? If the answer is yes, then you need to stop running. Because every time you run from pain, it follows. But when you stop and face it directly, everything begins to shift. The fear starts to dissolve. The story begins to change. And here's something no one may have told you before. The pain you fear the most is not a punishment. It's a passage. In the next part, we'll go deeper into that truth. What role does pain actually serve in your life? Why does it seem to return just when everything seems to be under control? And, most importantly, how can it become your greatest ally in your journey to real inner freedom? Let's find out together. But before we do, ask yourself this. Have you been trying to get rid of pain or to understand it? Because Carl Jung didn't see suffering as a mistake. He saw it as a call to transformation. And that's exactly where we'll go next. Shall we continue? When you finally stop running from pain and start listening to it, something remarkable happens. The noise quiets, and the message becomes clearer. It often starts subtly. A person begins to feel a heaviness they can't explain. Anxiety creeps in. Their energy vanishes. A strange sadness lingers, even on days when everything seems fine on the outside. They go to doctors, take tests, maybe even start medication, but nothing seems to help. That's because the problem isn't in the body. The body is simply expressing what the mind refuses to face, living out of alignment with your truth, denying who you are. What you feel or what you need creates a silent war inside you, and eventually your body becomes the battlefield. Here's another example. Someone keeps ending up in the same kind of relationship, always chasing after emotionally unavailable partners, always feeling unseen, unloved, and rejected. Each time it ends the same way, a feeling of not being good enough. But this isn't bad luck. This is a pattern, and patterns are reflections. What looks like emotional failure on the surface is actually a mirror, reflecting an old wound, likely one from childhood, that still hasn't been healed. Until that wound is acknowledged, the suffering will repeat itself like a song on loop, not to punish you, but to remind you. Because life, in its strange and painful wisdom, will always push you to confront what you're avoiding. But once you begin to interpret pain, not as punishment, but as a symbolic language, your entire perspective begins to shift. The ache that once felt cruel or random becomes a compass, pointing you, sometimes urgently, toward the places within that need your attention. Pain becomes the teacher, the guide, the signal. And as paradoxical as it might sound, pain, when truly listened to with depth and honesty, has the power to heal. Why? Because it forces you to pause, to look within, to make changes that matter. This is where your greatest responsibility lies. Now that you know, ignoring pain becomes a form of self-abandonment. Avoiding it is no longer innocent, it's a choice to remain asleep. But if you meet your pain with courage, with openness, and with curiosity, it will take you somewhere you may have never been before. A place of real peace. A peace that doesn't depend on the world being perfect, but on you finally becoming whole. And that's what we'll explore next. The other side of pain. What actually happens when you stop resisting and begin to integrate every part of yourself, even the parts you've spent years trying to reject. Because healing isn't about making pain disappear. It's about transforming pain into clarity, into power, into a deep knowing of who you truly are. Let's continue down that path. In the next section, we'll discover what it really means to become whole, and how it feels when the war within you finally comes to an end. Are you ready to take that next step? Let's go. When you begin to embrace the parts of yourself you once rejected, something extraordinary begins to unfold. Suffering no longer holds the same grip over your life. Carl Jung called this transformation individuation, but not in the sense of becoming someone impressive or special. Rather, it's the deep, often quiet journey of becoming fully yourself, stripped of distortions, masks, and roles. A whole human being. Real, honest, unfiltered. And this kind of authenticity doesn't arise from ego or pride. It grows from radical acceptance. It's not about finding yourself like a lost item. It's about recognizing yourself in what has always been there, buried beneath the noise and defenses, and only those who are brave enough to walk through the ruins of their own soul and piece together what was once broken, can truly claim that they've found themselves at this point. Something subtle but powerful changes. You stop hiding your pain, because now you see it for what it really was, a necessary part of the journey, but not the definition of who you are. Pain becomes the path, not the destination. Looking back, every crisis, every emotional spiral, every night you thought would never end, it all served a deeper purpose. These moments stripped away the illusions. They shattered the false sense of control. They peeled back the layers of who you were pretending to be, so that you could finally see who you really are. And the truth that emerges isn't comfortable. It doesn't offer easy relief. Instead, it demands presence. It demands conscious choice. Because once you've seen your own shadow, once you've understood what pain was really teaching you, once you've tasted the power of your real self, you can no longer live on autopilot. You begin to notice who nourishes your soul and who drains it. You stop tolerating the things you once accepted, simply to avoid confrontation or discomfort. You start saying no without guilt, and more importantly, you begin saying yes to yourself, fully, clearly, and without apology. This shift doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It works in silence, but it transforms everything. It's not about becoming a new person. It's about ceasing the betrayal of the person you've always been, the one you buried, the one you feared was unlovable, the one you're now learning to protect. And this is where a profound realization often hits. You never needed to heal to be worthy of love. You only needed to accept yourself, to stop living from a place of scarcity. Because the peace you've been chasing out there in people, in accomplishments, in distractions, was quietly waiting for you within. But beware, this is where many stop. The pain fades. Old patterns dissolve. Life begins to feel lighter. And just when it's easy to relax, to coast, a subtle temptation creeps in, to stay there, to declare the work done. But Jung warned us, there's still one final step, one that too many overlook, because individual healing only becomes complete when it transforms into something larger. Contribution, meaning, purpose. What do you do with the light you gained from crossing your darkness? How do you live when your eyes are finally open? This is the final threshold. The conscious choice, not just to survive, but to exist with purpose, awareness, and responsibility. Because, now that you've been reborn, life asks more of you. You've heard every word. You've felt every truth, cut deep like a blade. And still you stayed. That alone places you in rare company. Most run the moment truth begins to hurt. Most retreat into distraction. But you didn't. You remained. And because of that, a choice now stands before you. Will you go back to the old patterns that quietly drained your power? Or will you finally claim authorship of your life? It doesn't matter what happened in the past. It doesn't matter who hurt you, who left you, or what you lacked. What matters now is what you choose to do with all of it. Because the pain you've carried can become strength. The emptiness can become space, fertile ground for growth. And the traumas that once defined you, they don't have to be your prison. They can be the foundation of your liberation. But here's what's essential to understand. Awareness comes at a cost. Because once you see, you can't unsee. Once you understand, ignorance is no longer an option. You've been called to live at a higher level. And that means no more hiding behind excuses. No more betraying yourself for acceptance. No more settling for scraps when you know you were made for more. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be ready. No one is. What you need is to decide, to choose every single day to live with awareness. To look yourself in the mirror with both firmness and compassion. To act, not just think. Not just dream, but act, because knowledge without action is just another form of self-betrayal. Carl Jung once said that individuation, this becoming whole, is the work of a lifetime. And today, this may have been your very first true step on that path. Maybe, for the first time, you understood. You are not broken. You're unfolding. You're evolving. You're under reconstruction, and your pain. It wasn't a curse, it was a call. A message from your soul, a call to come home now. Pause and reflect. What was the moment in this video that pierced the deepest? What truth shook something awake inside you? Write it down below. Let it be your commitment to yourself. Because when you name it, you claim it. And who knows, your story might be exactly what someone else needs to read right now. If this video shook you, moved you, made you feel something real, don't stop here, because the next video continues what we've started. It's not the end, it's only the beginning. I'll meet you there.